Hello and welcome to the Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, and I'm your host for this program, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. At 20 crore plus people and almost 14.2% of the population, Muslims are a significant religious minority in India. What is the character of the community? Are they socially and politically homogeneous? Do they have common interests? Do they have similar choices of food, clothing, language, and politics? Most importantly, if all Muslims evoke a similar response from the dominant non Muslim community or the Hindus as they do now, the answer to all these questions should be an emphatic yes. But is it so? Can we look at this complex issue that led to the partition of colonial India purely in black and white terms? Are there no gray shades, areas of ambiguity that require further analysis and debate? I will speak to a very eminent political scientist of India, Hilal Ahmed, who is an associate professor at CSDS. He has written on diverse issues, including on general politics, but he's also focused essentially on the minority issue, which is one of the major dilemmas or the major problems which confront every social scientist in India. He's also been the guest editor of the latest edition of the most important magazine, Seminar, which actually explores, the theme is Exploring Muslim India. So, Hilal Ahmed, first of all, welcome to this program and thank you very much for sparing your time to come and join us on this very important discussion.
Thank you very
Let
much,
me
Daniela.
begin by, putting to you what you argued in your essay in introducing the theme of the seminar, where you start with Sayyid Shahabuddin, possibly in the modern contemporary era of Indian politics, most easily identifiable Muslim leader. He used to bring out a magazine called Muslim India, which actually, in the years when people like us started writing on the Sangh Parivar, on the Ayodhya agitation, used to actually bank on it as one of the major source materials. You report on that you write in your essay the engagement you had with him. Should it be Muslim India or should it be Indian Muslims? It's the same kind of debate which used to happen in the late 80s and early 90s also. Now, let us try to understand from you. You seem to be not very comfortable with the idea or the label of Muslim India. You would rather have it as an Indian Muslim. But on the other side, there is also this issue that if you can have a Hindu India, if you can have, women of India, then why not Muslims of India? I'd like to hear you out on this first.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, it's a complicated question which requires a lot of time and obviously energy. But I'll try to restrict to what Shahabuddin used to argue.
Yes.
And in my essay, I have very clearly, he was very fond of my criticism. It's a great thing because I started interviewing him in early 2000 when I was involved in my doctoral research. And it was a puzzling question. So let me just first tell you what exactly his meaning was. He said that actually India is an important, it's a whole, and Muslim is just one fragment of it. So that fragment is important because this fragment has its own specificity, and this fragment, like other fragments, will contribute to this whole grand idea of India. So this is what he used to say. So he would say that Muslim India does not mean that Muslims have got any right on India, meaning that there could be one Hindu India, one women's India, one Adivasi India, one Dalit India, etc., and so on. And remember that it was the beginning of the era when we actually formally entered into the realm of identity politics. That was his conceptualization.
Post 2002 Gujarat riots.
Yes. But in fact, he started his magazine in 80s, 83.
Late 80s.
Yes.
Around the time when people like
80s,
us started reporting on the rise of the Hindu right.
Yeah. And his idea was to produce, basically three things in that magazine. One was basically hardcore fact, which he would collect from here and there. Remember, it was not the era when we had internet. So it was very quick. Now it is very easy to get access to data, but that was not true at that time. So he would labor a lot to get these data and
Oh, yes.
organize them. That was one thing. Second, only just one original thing, that was his editorial. And finally, and the second thing was that different opinion pieces. So he would take different opinion pieces and produce them. And the most important thing, which is actually not a main thing but very important, he would write a chronology of the month.
That's right.
So very important issues related to Muslim will come in that chronology of the month.
That's right.
But that was his imagination. And I was very critical of this, because I thought, in my view, it was problematic because it has got a polemical touch. The manner in which every identity politician does in India, and especially related to those who are doing politics of marginalized communities. So it had that polemical touch. So that's why I was highly uncomfortable, because his intention was not to clarify something, rather to create confusion constantly in order to evoke some kind of a reaction. So that's
And he
one
was
thing.
also trying to create a political constituency for himself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was critical of that. One. Second thing is that, if we reduce Muslim only to their religious identity, it would become a problem. Because Muslim identity, every individual has got various identity attributes. So we should not reduce that to that, that individual into only one religious kind of identity. And that was one of the criticism which I had of his conceptualization of Muslim India. Because in my view, that Muslim identity is highly diversified. So his response was equally fascinating. He would say that he would agree with my criticism, but he would say that there are some moments when the entire Muslim community would behave as a homogeneous entity. So he said that your argument of diversity is fine, but there are certain moments when the entire Muslim community would speak like one homogeneous entity. I was critical of that as well, but I won't go into that. Yeah.
Now, can I say, when you say that there are times when the entire Muslim community are treated like a homogeneous community. Now, let me actually, pose a question. Since 2014 particularly, at various stages, there have been occasions where the entire Muslim community has been posed as a homogeneous community.
Absolutely.
There have been specific places they have been there. There have been occasions where they have not been posed as a homogeneous community. Most recently, when in the BJP National Executive Meeting, the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, said that the BJP should reach out to the Pasmanda Muslims, which is actually a loose fraternity of what we can call the OBCs, scheduled castes, and maybe even tribal Muslims. It might sound very surprising to people that there are still these caste identities within Islam in India, but well, that is one of the facts which we are dealing with. So you have one homogeneous community thrust on us, especially now, where every Muslim, just the name, just the way that you appear, if you actually, quote unquote, look a Muslim, you're immediately viewed with suspicion. Now, does that not actually lead to a situation where the Muslim becomes more aware of his identity, and the basic reaction, barring, of course, people, who are, scholars or enlightened people, communities from people like you, but the average Muslim on the street gets targeted, gets spoken about, gets identified, gets labeled, most importantly, for the religious identity. In that case, if that person takes recourse to the religious identity, how is that person wrong?
I think it's a very important question. But let me tell you, in the same essay, in the seminar, I have tried to answer this question in a different way. I make a distinction between two things. One is the diversity question, which I said most substantive Muslimness. What does I mean? I mean that there is a variety of ways in which Islamic identity is evoked as a self-recognition, in order to say that I belong to this particular community. But there are various ways in which that kind of Islam is practiced by Muslim communities across the board and in different contexts. That's one. But there is one homogeneous identity that is actually imposed to Muslim. That could be positive identity as well as negative identity.
Well,
In
at
the
the moment,
positive
it is
sense,
predominantly negative.
Yeah,
You're constantly
predominantly
asked to prove
negative
your
at the
loyalty.
moment, but at the same time, this homogeneity is also imposed when we recognized that Muslim actually constitute a religious minority in the constitutional terms. It's a positive sense in which oneness is evoked in order to identify specific rights that are given to Muslim in the constitution. So that is the positive way in which homogeneity is constituted. But there is equally powerfully negative way in which Muslim as other are also constituted.
Yeah,
And in
basically,
that sense, so what is the reception of this? As I said, that Muslim identity is actually function. I'll give you one abstract theoretical example argument, and then
yeah,
I'll explain to you. Muslim identity is basically, or like any identity, is function like a pendulum. So
right,
diversity is actually one extreme end of that pendulum,
right.
while homogeneity is is
Other
the
end,
other end. Yeah. So it operates, and it operates in a context. So it depends on at what particular time a Muslim person, male or female, is addressed in what ways. So
right.
that self-perception actually revolves
Okay,
like oscillate like a pendulum between these two ends. So that's one abstract theoretical formulation which I
great.
propose in my essay. But there is another way in which I can explain and I can give you that example. Obviously, Muslims have recognized the fact that they are identified as one other in
Right,
contemporary India. But that otherness is actually forcing them to come out with different kind of survival strategies in order to accommodate in an overtly Hindutva dominated environment.
right.
So therefore,
Find
what
space
they
for
are doing,
themselves.
they yes. So and I'll give you one very concrete example to substantiate my point.
Great.
And this point is simply this: that in our Pew survey, we asked this question about discrimination. Have you experienced any discrimination in last 1 year? So in North India, obviously the level of discrimination was much
Much
higher.
higher.
But if you look at the total percentage of Muslims, and remember it's a huge survey, 32,000 people
That's
were
right.
interviewed, and the percentage of people who would say that they have faced discrimination was just 24 at the all India level. It means that the othering of Muslim has been actually become so normalized that they don't feel every day when they encounter 9 o'clock news, nine
Right,
o'clock, demonization of Muslim identity, it is quite normal for them. So they know that this has happened. The average Muslim, coming back to your question, they
right,
know that this has happened, and therefore they have to constitute ways in which, in order to survive in this highly,
right.
versatile, and complex environment.
And survival becomes very important. Now, let
Yeah.
us move to some very specifics. Like I said, Mr. Modi a few months ago at the BJP meeting said that the BJP should take out what he said, Snehe Yatras, basically,
Yes.
going and reaching out to the Muslims. And he also said that we should reach out to the poorer sections, the socially backward communities within the Muslims, essentially not looking at Muslims as a homogeneous community. In the last almost more than 100 days since he actually spoke and intervened on that, there have been several developments. There has, of course, been the development related to Bilkis Bano, who is from the Pasmanda Muslim community. We have also seen that the RSS chief has met some very prominent elite individuals who
Mhm.
appeared to be representing the Muslims without actually having any, go ahead or any clear, represent, any certificate of representation, if I can actually use that. So we have had these kind of things. There has also been this very nasty incident, involving, one of the prominent BJP spokespersons, Nupur Sharma, who said something very vile against the Prophet, which led to an international backlash, as a result of which the government had to do some kind of a, face-saving gestures within. So these are all actually part of those strategic moves. There is one section which says. The other section also feels that this is possibly necessary for the BJP because this narrative of constant Hindu-Muslim binary cannot continue endlessly election after election. There would be a time when people are going to vote on lines of their livelihood concerns, how have their livelihoods fared? And especially since 2020, because of COVID crisis, everybody's life has gone on a downswing. So there would be obviously judgments made on how this government has performed. So there is this fear that the BJP has that from identity politics, we are once again going to go back to performative politics. How do you look at what has happened in the last few months, especially after Mr. Modi said there really speaking has not been much of an effort? No Sneha Yatra has been taken out from to my best of my understanding. No particular committees have been formed in Uttar Pradesh to actually encourage, intercommunity relations in the state. It remains as fractured as it was. Yet statements are issued and such high publicity meetings are held.
Yeah, it's a very important and interesting question, and I'm glad you asked this question in this way. Basically, and I do not want to get into directly into your question.
Right.
Rather, I would like to give you some kind of a context in which these things became crucial for the BJP to act like this. The context is that BJP is actually BJP. When I say BJP, BJP led by Narendra Modi and Amit Shah at the
That's
moment.
right.
It is actually a professional political party. And the professionalism they have worked out is very, I would say, impressive in a way that they know how to say, what to say, and when to say.
When to
So,
say.
yeah. So so the requirement of professional politics is very crucial. And you are absolutely right, because economy is doing bad, etc. But I do not want to reduce everything to the electoral gains. So we have to
Right.
understand that as a professional political party, when you contest election, especially when you're, the BJP's challenge is not, BJP is facing challenges not from outside. The challenges are coming from within.
From within.
And because these challenges are crucial, why? Because now if BJP really want to establish its hegemony, it has to do two things. One, it has to consolidate its Hindutva constituency in
Right.
such a way that the impact of economic backsliding, etc., should
Gets
not
minimized.
disintegrate. Yes, disintegrate that, especially in regional context.
Right.
Obviously, no, national elections are not going to come. At
Right.
least there are two years, which two
Right.
crucial years we still have. So in the regional context, BJP has always faced severe challenges from different political party. So it
That's
is
right.
very important at the Vidhan Sabha level that they have to intact their Hindutva constituency. One.
Right.
Second is that, we all know, meaning we who do political analysis,
Right.
especially
Right.
electoral analysis, that there is a floating voter. And
Right.
BJP is fully aware of the fact that this floating voter is not the committed voter of the Hindutva constituency which they have created. This floating voter is interested in some kind of an inclusive newness.
Right.
And this newness can only be possible if BJP as a professional political party come out with a constructive plan of action.
Right.
Remember that Hindu-Muslim binary is not going to work for a long. So in
Right.
order to actually manage that professionally, it requires that on the one hand, we stick to the idea of one religion called Hinduism and the
Right.
Hindutva constituency. But at the same time, and if you clearly look at the ways in which Muslims are addressed, Muslims are always addressed by the BJP as fragments. So during the time of Triple Talaq, it was women. And now recently it was Pasmanda Muslim. So
Mhm.
meaning these fragments, you should approach these fragments in such a
Right.
way that your developmental agenda can be substantiated on the one hand, and at the same time it would give a message to the floating voter that obviously we are going to come with some kind of a constructive program of action.
Right.
And it goes well with the idea of charitable state, which I have been writing on for a long time.
Right. That this is not so much of, policies of welfare, but this is more of charity.
Yes,
That's something,
one quick
which you.
point.
Yeah.
One quick point. See, BJP is very clear, and in fact, that's very important to remember that BJP is, as a professional party, is very clear that Muslims are not going to vote for them. They are
Right.
very absolutely clear. So they need Hindu votes in order to consolidate their position in such a way that we also care about fragments of Muslims.
Well, they do get fragments of Muslim votes? Even in
Absolutely,
Uttar
yeah.
Pradesh,
In our surveys,
they
it's
did.
8 to 9%. 8 to
Yeah, the
9%.
CST
Yeah.
study establishes that you did,
Yes.
even from the
Yeah.
Pasmanda Muslims. It has to be verified. Much more work has to be done
Yeah.
to be actually able to quantify. But right
Yeah.
from 2002 Gujarat onwards, we have seen at least a small section of
Hmm.
Muslims do vote for the BJP. Now, there's something very interesting when you actually were speaking about the BJP. You just put a rider at that point. This is Mr. Modi's BJP, or the BJP under Mr. Modi. Now, there is a qualitative difference between the BJP of the earlier times and now. Most importantly, is that when the Vajpayee government was there, among the other things which they try to show that they have brought in the Hindutva era, is that they decided to form a committee to review the constitution. Later on, there was a big noise, so they said that we are going to review the working of the constitution. But they
Yeah.
started on the note that we want a new constitution. Instead, this government, right from the beginning, the prime minister said that this is the only holy book of the country. That is the
Yes.
exact word which he used, and calling parliament temple of democracy,
Democracy.
and various these kind of things which have been done. You have developed this argument of what you call that the BJP has become the adherent of constitutional Hindutva, which is that within the constitution, same frame, but they are interpreting it to further Hindutva politics. I'd like to hear you on this.
Yeah, it's actually, and you have explained that this is a different BJP.
Yes.
It is different because if we look at, and you have worked extensively on RSS and Hindutva politics for a long time, and we all know that constitution was something they were highly uncomfortable with.
That's right.
So they wanted to revise it, reject it, and then amend it. But Narendra Modi is, and as I said, is an intelligent politician. He is intelligent because he actually realized the fact that constitution is actually a reference point to do every sort of politics in this country. And when he became the chief, during the time when he was the chief minister, he used to evoke constitution time and again to
That's right.
legitimize his policies. So we have to remember that it has got a long history of its own. But
He
when
started doing this,
Modi,
especially just a rider. He started doing it, especially after 2006 onwards, when he realized that the continuous image of him as a Hindu Hriday Samrat, or the emperor of Hindu hearts, is not going to be good for him in the long run.
yes, absolutely. So he evoked constitution in an interesting way. And when he became the prime ministerial candidate, he was the first person who said that's a holy book.
Yes.
And then he did not stop after becoming the prime minister. We know that the constitution day started, it was first celebrated in 20, I think 15 or something. It was not the practice earlier. So
Yeah.
but what is specific about this Hindutva constitutionalism? So I have point out three things. There are three features of this Hindutva constitutionalism.
Mhm.
First of all, they intentionally make a distinction between principles that are there in the constitution, philosophical principles
Yes.
that are there
The
and the
dream that
rules.
was there.
Yes, yes, the philosophical principles and the
True.
rules. So they would say that philosophical principles are the settled issue. We need not to evoke equality, liberty, etc. These are settled things. Let us talk about rules. So that is the first thing which they constantly evoke. And if you look at the statement that we need responsive government, we need duty-bound government, etc., these are coming from the rules framework, not the principles which actually lead to these rules. That's one.
Right.
Second feature of Hindutva constitutionalism is that there is a lot of emphasis on the idea of minority,
Hmm.
not majority. So I always, reject this thesis that obviously it's a majoritarianism, but
Right.
this majoritarianism is justified through the language of minorityism. And
Hmm.
CEA is the best example. So they would argue that minorities in the subcontinent are actually non-Muslim minority in Muslim-dominated countries are facing this, and
Right.
therefore there is a need to protect their interest. Minorities in India are perfectly all right. So therefore, this minoritization of majoritarian politics is a very important point of reference of Hindutva constitutionalism.
Right.
The third thing is that one nation, one constitution.
Right.
So it gives us an impression that constitution was actually a settled thing in 1947, 1949, 52.
Right.
But this is not the case. Because in our story of unification of India, there are only three villains: Junagadh, Hyderabad, Kashmir.
That's
But
right.
what about other princely states? So the India which we know now is actually a process by which it came into existence. But here, Article 370 and the article which are not, remember that these article added, or the explanation added to these article later. But
on.
the impression is given to us that as if that constitution is actually providing an homogeneous entity called India, and therefore everything that does not actually respond to that is an abbreviation, it's a wrong, it's an absurd thing, and it should be get rid of it. So
That's
this
right.
is the argument, remember, which both Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Narendra Modi evoked when there was a debate on Article 370. So
Right.
all these three features of Hindutva constitutionalism are time and again used. And in fact, this hijab thing is
Right.
the best example to actually elaborate this notion of Hindutva constitutionalism.
Right.
Because look at the High Court judgment and the manner in which Chief Minister of Karnataka responded to the question of hijab.
Yes.
So it means that the legal constitutional framework is being used by the Hindutva forces in order to create. Yeah.
Let me add a rider when it suits them.
Yes.
When it suits them, they would do it. But when the Places of Worship Act does not suit them, then they would try to declare it unlawful. There's a court case going on in the Supreme Court, which is filed by a member of the BJP, who's part of the legal cell of the BJP. So, which is not suitable is fine. But I think, not just the constitution, I'm just trying to, go into the final bit of our conversation. Basically, this is majoritarian imposition on the system. Now, this could have happened only if it had the media on its side, which it has to a great extent. If it had the economy on its side, at least those who have the economic drivers of this country, both in terms of government and within the private place, they seem to be having, with them. They have legitimacy. That is most important, which, as I pointed out, with the review of constitution, suddenly was not there for the Vajpayee regime, because they were seen to be something very sinister. But out here is, this regime is simply trying to make this system work better. So the Muslims must accept that the fact, what Mr. Mohan Bhagwat keep on saying, that this is a Hindu Rashtra, everybody is a Hindu, and they are free to practice their own faith. But you cannot be a Hindu and practice your own faith. That is a different way. You'll have to do what they call a ghar wapsi. So it's a very multi-layered way, which actually leaves the Muslim very frustrated and feel, again, having a sense of being entrapped within this this maze of words. Would you say that?
See, I think because there are 2-3 things which are coming in your this long comment.
Right.
First of all is that there is a very interesting. We actually tend to look at the coherence in Hindutva politics.
Right.
So we should actually get rid of that. This is actually problematic. There is no coherence. There is no coherence. Rather, it's actually context-based responses. Right. And these context-based responses are always very intelligent, because certain kind of metaphor that are available to us in the public sphere are used to justify those kind of moves. So Hindutva constitutionalism is one kind of move. Yes. Like, for instance, colonialism is something that was already there, an established metaphor, and it is used to justify certain moves. Now, but when I look at Mr. Bhagwat's statement, and I think that actually leads us to also look at the professionalism of a different kind. Right. And this professionalism, because BJP is also, you have written extensively on Sangh Parivar. So this idea of, I always look at Parivar in not merely in terms of consensus, but in terms of conflict as well. So
Right.
I also, BJP at the moment, as I said, facing one kind of a challenge from the floating, the consolidation
There
of
is
constituency
consolidated
and the floating voter,
the vote
etc.
bank.
But at the same time, there is also a, discomfort in the parivar itself, because
Right.
now for the first time, RSS is being marginalized. So in
Right.
order to assert its hegemony again, at least ideological hegemony, it is very important for RSS to remind the government, the BJP, as well as the wider public, that it
Right.
has got its own hegemony over, at least ideological hegemony, as I said,
Right.
over
The
the
entire
parivar.
regime. Yeah.
Yes, the entire regime, and that's why, and this is actually positive, because they are coming out, which the other political players are not, not at all interested in. So
Right.
when Mohan Bhagwat says that, DNA of Muslims and Hindu is similar, etc., and whether you like it or not, okay, fine, this is Hindu Rashtra for me, but you can call
Right.
it India, etc. So he is actually answering, on the one hand, he's creating a different kind of constituency, but at the same
Right.
time, he is also doing something else. And this is that for the first time, Sangh is interested in providing some kind of a coherence, at least systematic way in which one argument can be linked to another argument.
Right.
And it reminds me what you just said about Ghar Wapsi. Obviously, all are Hindus, but what about caste? What about Pasmanda Muslims?
Right.
Obviously, they were the doubly distressed community. At one point of time,
Right.
they were the Hindus, and Muslims, according to them, forced them to convert to Islam, etc. So it means it is a responsibility of the Hindus of the contemporary time to open their door and embrace them without any Ghar
Right.
Wapsi. But even if the Ghar Wapsi happens, that question of caste would remain.
First,
So
what
this is
label do you
the
give them?
reason why. Yes. So this is the reason why they have to answer that question. And
Right.
that for the first time, RSS is taking lead in providing some kind of a connection between, there was a lot of ambiguity. So some kind of a connected argument so that the ambiguity could go.
Right.
And remember, this is the first time they are in power. Other we, obviously we would have rejected this thing, this entire formulation, as if there is no connection between one arrow to another. But
Right.
this time, it's a different context. They are the dominant players. So they have to come out with certain inclusive framework in order to
Right.
accommodate all identities.
Right. It's a fascinating conversation, and we really cannot ever have a conclusion to it. This is something which is going to continue. I do not know for how long, because it has been going on at least for the last 3.5 decades, ever since, the Muslim issue became central to Indian polity over the last several decades. And I think, it is going to be on center stage for quite some time. And I would look forward to having continuous dialogue with you. Thank you, Hilal Ahmed, for coming and joining us on this very important discussion on an issue which is actually always gripping the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lan. Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.